So this third and final session of this particular set of webinars is all about spatial reasoning. And I think, well, the reason this is so important is because it's an area that I think is really overlooked. And if you look at the EYFS and anybody who works in school or who knows the early learning goals, will know that the goals at the end of reception are purely about number and number patterns. So there is kind of a big gap. Years ago, there used to be goals on Space Open Measure, but those are no longer there. So what it means is that we have to really make sure that in our curriculum, whether we're childminders or in preschools or day nurseries or nursery classes or reception classes, we have to make sure that we keep planning for those real rich opportunities for spatial reasoning to develop in our children, and that we don't let it slip off the radar because it's not such a big focus anymore in the early learning goals, and also that we just don't make it about shapes. So hopefully tonight you'll find what I've got to share with you useful. You will get the slides. There are lots of links in here as well that you'll be able to click on once you get the PDF sent through. So welcome first of all. And I'm going to do one of these things that you may have seen me do before if you've been with me. It's not my idea, so I can't steal all the credit for it, but it's called a chat blast. And a chat blast basically means that I'm going to ask you about this question, and you're going to type your answer into the chat box, but you're not going to press send until I tell you to. So it's quite a nice way to open up. It's quite kind of, it's not pressured at all. There's no right there, there's no wrong. It's very open. So the question for all of you watching tonight, think about your settings and imagine one of the children in your settings, whatever age they are, developing their spatial reasoning. Okay, and pop into the chat box, what sort of things are they doing? But don't press send yet. So we're thinking about a small child developing spatial reasoning and what sort of thing are they doing? And pop in the chat box and I will tell you when to send, not yet. Imagine a small child developing their spatial reasoning, what are they doing? And send, let's go, let's see what you're thinking of. Let's have a look. Have a little look. I'm going to open up on my side to have a look at your side in case you can't see the box I've got on my screen. And let's see what we've got. So we've got crawling, shape sorting, quadrant height space, packing a backpack, building blocks, squeezing, spinning, building large scale puzzles, filling a cup, building with tiles. Oh, they love those, don't they? Putting things in and out of boxes, playing with water and on bikes, laying upside down, under tables and chairs, putting things in boxes, running around. Lots and lots of ideas. Yeah, brilliant. And I'm going to come back to you for a minute. What's really interesting is there's actually quite a lot of schemas we're thinking about there, aren't there? Quite a lot of trajectories we've got there, you know, like rotation and transportation and filling and emptying. So a lot of kind of schematic play by its very nature is very rich in spatial reasoning. So fantastic. Right. Okay, let's crack on. So one of the resources that I'm really passionate about sharing with you, and I think I've shared with it everything we do, is this work from, it's called the ECMG, which stands for the Early Childhood Maths Group. And it's a group that I'm really proud to be a member of. It's a group of people, a lot of them are far more highly qualified than myself, a lot of doctors within this group and professors of early maths. But it's a really brilliant website. So if you want to have it, I think it's literally called earlymaths.org. Loads of resources in there. And I bet it's really Damon putting the link in the chat. He's very good like that. I bet it is. Yeah, we've got, this is a really, I think, quite important. Oh, thank you, Damon, as always. This is a really great quote, actually, to really think about what is spatial reasoning. And in short, it's all about how we relate to each other and how we fit into our environment, okay? So from babies, okay, yeah, they're reaching out for toys, or for you, you know, Christmas time or birthdays, wrapping up those presents. Even when you're getting up in the morning and you're getting to work every day and you're planning your route and you're changing it if there's traffic or there's an obstruction, you know, we're using it every day, this spatial reasoning. And it kind of, you know, it gets us through the day, right? So we're using it all the time, inside, outside, but it's also about, if you go on here, manipulating, maneuvering objects to communicate and make sense of visual images, schematic maps and diagrams. So even if you're reading a map, looking at diagrams, all those things require spatial reasoning. So that's what we'll be thinking about this evening. I've got a really short little video clip to show coming up now, and I'm really hoping it's going to work for you. Yeah, but it should do. I think I'm making sure I'm sharing sound. Oh, no, I wasn't. I am now. Sharing sound. Yeah. Right, I'm going to pop this on. Damon, if you can't hear it, please let me know in the chat. But here we go.
Look closely. What do you see? Believe it or not, this baby is doing math. Spatial relations, or the relative position of objects and people, is an important part of geometry. Young children explore this concept as they play, like 5-month-old Maddox is learning about in and out and up and down with this busy box. By stacking blocks, Jorge is showing he understands how to combine objects in space, a more advanced spatial skill. Now that he can stand and balance, it's easier to practice this exciting new math concept. Brian is exploring the idea of in and out by dropping blocks into the tube. Watch how carefully he works at this task and how his mom supports his learning by letting him do it again and again. Parents can help their children master new skills and concepts through repetition. 15-month-old Mateo is learning the concept of in front and behind as he and his dad play peekaboo with the cloth. This game helps him learn where his body is in relation to other people. Here we see Noah using his knowledge of shape and position to place the block on a flat surface rather than on the curved block. His mom acts as his coach while he thinks through this early geometry problem. Good job. Catherine is exploring how shapes relate to one another as she works out how to make puzzle pieces fit, turning them until they slide in their spaces. And Thomas and Brody, both age 3, problem solve the best way to push the ball through the tunnel. Watch how their early spatial skills help them cooperate on this task. Building friendships and learning geometry, all in a day's play.
It'll be a very short clip there, but really showing you those sorts of things we do all the time, you know, peekaboo, stacking, putting things inside other things, you know, obstacle courses, jigsaw puzzles. All of those things are great opportunities to develop this spatial thinking. And again, back to the earlyyears.org, the Early Years Child Maths group, there's so much evidence that spatial reasoning is linked to so many other areas in terms of maths, science, and think about creativity. You know, I don't know if any of you have ever really watched children engage in, for example, in block play, and how children work things out and the kind of patterns and asymmetry that even quite young children can be quite fascinated by. So I think spatial reasoning, again, tonight I'm really here to say to you, you know, let's get it really back on the menu for our children as part of our curriculum. And whether you use Birth to 5 Matters, as I'm sure many of you do, or Development Matters, both of those documents have within them some really kind of core elements that will help you to develop this as part of your provision. I'm not going to play this video for you. It is Helen Williams, who's part of the maths group, and she's actually got a short video on here, which I'll get to say, you're going to get this with the link. And about something that the early childhood maths group have developed, especially around spatial reasoning, called the Spatial Reasoning Toolkit. It's really, really worth checking out. There's so many resources in here, including, as you're going to see coming up in a moment, some really useful posters that I would really recommend for you downloading and printing out to put up in your setting, whatever type of setting you're in, and they go from birth right through to 7-year-olds. Okay, so again, lots and lots in here, but we're not going to watch that today. So this is the first poster that I was telling you about just now. These are free to download on that same website. You can get the QR code there, or you can go online and get them. And they've got a few of these posters. This one is for the under threes, okay? So we're really thinking at this stage, in these very early kind of years, we're thinking about our babies and the sort of things that we're seeing them doing. Okay, so, you know, those small babies, yes, we're seeing them reaching, aren't we? We're seeing them tracking and following things that are moving. We're seeing them grabbing and grasping, and we're seeing them moving their bodies even before they're mobile. If you think of a small baby, even tiny babies, you know, they're moving, they're wriggling, they're reaching, they're stretching. All of these, it's all part of that very early spatial reasoning. And I think it's interesting because often when we're perhaps observing our children, we think about it through a physical lens, perhaps, or if they've made a wonderful block structure, we think of it through a expressive arts and design lens. Or if they're out in the garden and they're pouring and filling, we think of it through a science lens. What we're not always seeing is actually how intricately woven through this spatial reasoning is. And in these very early years, as it says on this poster, it's really about an awareness of their body. And if we think about, I'm sure you've all heard of object permanence. You know, that sort of that moment, that concept that a child realizes that when they drop something on the floor, it's still there. It's not gone forever. That's also a big part of spatial reasoning in those early years. And again, you know, peekaboo and hiding things, and the little boy with the dad with the, you know, the flannel over his face and peeking out and putting it on his head. All of those really basic things are promoting these kind of very early beginnings of spatial reasoning. So these are really good posters. I definitely recommend having them, printing them out and putting them up in your settings. And I've just got a couple of little short videos here. So watch this little one here. Just watch this little one here. You know, he wants that ball, and I think we know he's going to get it, right? He's really motivated. So here we go. Oh, my internet's gone. And actually, what we're seeing there is also some really effective learning characteristics in action, isn't it? You know, we're seeing a child here who is focused, who is motivated, who is driven to reach his goal. And the fact that he's finding a way to move through his space because he wants that ball. Now, I'll show you. Oh no, I haven't. If I'll come up in a minute. So again, you know, this is obviously an under threes poster, but as children start getting older now, I think more of our toddlers, you know, you're going to see them, aren't we, transporting. And if you think about this is really linked to schemas again. Dr. Stella Louis has done some amazing work on schemas, so it's always worth looking up her work. That's Stella Louis. Thinking about your toddlers now. You know, how they're transporting things around, you know, how they're fitting things together, you know, perhaps they're stacking, you know, they're climbing, they're enclosing, perhaps they like hiding inside boxes, all these kind of really basic experiences. And what I like about these posters is the kind of vocabulary that it's giving you. So if you're working in a setting with other members of staff, you know, perhaps you've got assistants if you're a childminder, perhaps you're in a baby room or a toddler room within a setting, perhaps you're in a school or a preschool with other staff members with you. These are really great resources because they've kind of got that key vocabulary. And we know, don't we, how closely and intricately, you know, language is such a massive part of mathematics. And for a lot of children who struggle with mathematics, it's often because of the language element of it. So let's make sure that we're giving our children all this vocabulary, narrating when they're climbing and narrating when they're stacking things up or filling things up, all of that really important vocabulary. This little video here, I love this. This is about a dad who's collecting his little boy every day from nursery. But why I want you to watch this video is not only is it very, very cute, just keep looking at how this child is navigating his space. Okay, so we saw that baby who was on a mission to get that ball. Okay, now we've got a child here who's 2 years old, and just watch that no matter what's in his way, when he hears his dad's voice, he finds a way to get to him. He's really negotiating that space at a very young age. Here we go. Are you ready? We might not watch all of this. It goes on a bit of a while, but I'm sure you're going to get the flavour of what this is all about.
No matter how I'm feeling, every day that I come get my son from school, he makes me happy. Augie. Hi, Bubby. How you doing? Look at you. Augie. Hi, big guy. Uh-oh, don't fall. You got it. Come on. Hi, Bubba. You only got one shoe on. Hi. Augie, what are you doing? Hello. Hey, big guy. How are you? You ready? Hey, bud. You ready to go home?
He had a fantastic lunch today.
Aww. Hey, what are you doing?
I'll stop it there. So now you're getting the flavour of it. But also, isn't it that child, his confidence in moving over that time as well, isn't it? How much more confident, how much more steady he is on his feet, but how he hears his dad's voice, he knows where that sound's coming from, and how he's kind of negotiating his space, whether he's inside, whether he's outside, finding his way to his dad. So this is a child who is, getting more confident in himself, and he's beginning to know, how he fits into his environment. So keep going. And then the posters there, we're moving up to 3 and 4s and 4s to 5s. And you can see here, the vocabulary now is building up. So, with puzzles, we've got things like next to, turn, corner, pointy, curved and straight. And I do wonder how often would we use that sort of vocabulary with our 3 and 4-year-olds? Okay, so these are really good sort of tips. A lot as well about getting outside, okay, on here as well. And so lots of kind of vocabulary here. And we've got those kind of core elements. And we've got puzzles and books, obstacle courses, small world play. I wonder how often we really think about small world play and how powerful that is for this kind of spatial reasoning. Thinking about the positioning of things. And, if you get children creating their own small worlds. So, for example, if you've got a small world area where you've got kind of a lot of loose parts and natural resources, it's great that the children are actually building their own dinosaur worlds or building their own zoos or building their own, what else might they have, their own cities and towns, using those kind of things, blocks and things like that. Because actually when we create like that, when we begin to plan like that, and we're planning where we're going to put the logs and where we're going to, have the pool for the dinosaurs, have the little washes in and all those kind of things, not only is it linking to kind of geographical thinking, it's linking to that spatial reasoning again as we're planning and setting up. Getting out and about. So, for example, if any of you do regular little trips out with the children, especially if you're a childminder and you're out and about all the time, get them, if you're going for a walk to the park, get them looking at the landmarks you see on the way. Can they tell you what's going to come next? What are we going to see next and all that sort of thing? And then when you get home, maybe you could roll out a big bit of wallpaper and make a little drawing of that route that you took, all the things that they can remember, you know, the post box or the church, all that kind of thing. Pattern making, pattern spotting, you know, I think patterning is really important. I don't just mean red bear, blue bear, red bear, blue bear. I mean, you know, making patterns with leaves and sticks and conkers and all those kind of things, and looking at patterns on their clothing too. So lots of patterning, and then obviously block play. So that's kind of 3s to 4s, and the 4 to 5s now, we move to something called a barrier game. Now, you may not be familiar with a barrier game, but a barrier game basically means you have a book or a board or something, and you do something or build something one side and describe it and see if they can build it the other side. Because now it's becoming a bit more abstract now, isn't it? They're having to sort of visualize a little bit more now, okay? You've still got Small World on there as well, and puzzles. So some of these things are really consistent. You know, puzzles, construction, books, getting outside, small world play. But what we're thinking about is actually how that develops from our younger children through to the older children. So as they get older, yes, construction and puzzles, but it becomes more about visualization and perhaps mapping. And mapping, as I say, can be on a big bit of paper rolled out. Okay, so it becomes a little bit more abstract. I've got a video here for you now, which is about building an obstacle course. And this is something with the weather being great, well, not so great here today, but in generally with the weather being good in the summer, children love to be outside. We know that. We know they have to be outside according to the EYFS, and quite rightly so. So getting children involved in creating these obstacle courses, using lots of different things. You know, it might be things that cones and blocks, or it could be much more open-ended things, okay? But we want to build obstacle courses that give the children the chance to sort of go in and out, so go around, go over, go under, go through small spaces. Today I was in a reception class with a lot of very active boys, and if you get them engaged in an assault course or obstacle course like this, you're onto a winner. Okay, so there's a little example here for you to show you here. Here we are.
We're going up, we're going through, we're going up, we're going through. Right, need some room here so they can do it. And a big coaster like that.
So can you tell me words what you're doing? How do you do that? What?
So in, then out, then in, then out, and then in.
Oh yeah. And what happens when you get to the end, Alfie? When you get to the blocks?
Jump on it. No. And I think to go through that.
Really simple little examples there. But you know, this kind of sense of giving children those spaces to really explore those kind of positions and directions. So they can feel what it feels like to go in and out. And did you notice how he put the first two cones too close together, and then he realised it wasn't going to work and he put them apart? He could see that he couldn't get through them. So all of those opportunities are really important for children, and feeling those movements with a real kind of a big scale, she says. Oops, Daisy. Hello, hang on a minute, guys. Oh, hang on a minute. 1 minute, I'll come back to you in a second. 1 second. Okay, just love it when the tech plays you up. Let's come back to you. So you might be thinking about when you're setting tomorrow, if the sun's shining, put the children outside and really think about some of those sort of opportunities to develop those kind of, I'm doing it again. Why is it doing that? Hang on a minute, 1 minute, guys. Hello? No, right, I'm going to stop sharing for a second. Let me come back. Ta-da! 1 second. Right, let's just do this one. Share sound. Right, here we are. Slideshow. It's on current slide. No, that's it. Right. So I want to think for a minute then about some of the sort of provision that you will have in your settings, okay? So within your setting, you will have construction. So and you're going to get these sent through for you, as I say, on this slides afterwards, but just have a little think for a minute about your construction area. Because I think construction's fantastic for developing these kind of skills. As we saw, stacking and arranging and organising in terms of things like spacing. So just think for a minute about the sort of construction materials you've got in your setting. Have a little think for a second. Because you want a really big range of materials. So of course you want your things like your Duplo, or with younger ones, your Mega Blocks. But then you also want some wooden blocks and perhaps some kind of loose parts and sort of recycled things, cardboard boxes, cardboard tubes, those kind of things. So you've got that real mixture of resources. If you're teaching in reception class, you should really be thinking about getting them onto smaller Lego. Obviously, always be aware of it being a choke hazard. If you've got any children who sort of put things in their mouths. And I'm not saying that there's not a place for Duplo in reception, and it's very popular, but also for those, to develop those finer motor skills, more precise movements. Be thinking about things like your small Lego, or perhaps even if you're into year 1, things like Meccano. Also very popular are the magnetic shape tiles that people seem to have in nurseries and reception quite a lot as well. So when you go back tomorrow, have a little look at your construction materials. Have a think about, can children build inside, but can they also build outside? Have you got those, those big sort of scale sort of construction materials outside? Again, things like boxes and tubes, all that sort of thing. Have you got that mixture of loose parts? Junk modelling. I would love to know. I really hope people are still doing junk modelling. I think it maybe it's gone a bit out of favour. By that, I just mean, children are using boxes and things, recycling to make these amazing models. Their parents are always really happy to get that home time, aren't they? So, are we still doing junk modelling? Obviously, be aware of allergies with any of the boxes that you're taking in. But, do parents contribute their recycling to you? Have you got like a stash somewhere of boxes they can go and build with? I know someone the other day was saying to me that they with their cereal boxes, they kind of unstick them and tape them inside out, because that way the children actually can draw on the cardboard easier, sort of like reversing the box inside out. And about natural things as well, do you have things like pebbles, conkers, shells, all those sorts of things? Do you have images for the children? So I don't know where you're all living, but for example, living in Southend, if I was in school or nursery in my construction area, put a picture of Southend Pier or Adventure Island, as well as maybe some places in London as well. The children have things to look at to inspire them to build. And when they've made a construction, do you take photos of them, which you then kind of stick on the wall and celebrate, or put into a photo album? If you're with older children and they've made a great construction, maybe nursery or reception, you might say, well, let's talk about what you've made. You can literally scribe what they tell you. Oh, I made a castle with a pointy triangle on top, whatever they tell you. And do you build alongside them? Do you model ideas? And how accessible are your resources? And if you're working again in a preschool or a reception classroom, and you've got provision on offer, where is your construction located? Is it near things like the small world and loose parts or mark making? What does it make sense to have it near to? I think construction and small world together are really brilliant because it naturally kind of lends itself. But you also have things like clipboards and hard hats and pencils and all those kind of things that children can kind of draw as they're building. So if we go right back to the beginning of construction, now I think this video really shows you the very clear link between number and shape and space and measure. I know anyone who came to the number session with me a few weeks ago, I share this video as part of that to think about number. But today I want to share it with you in terms of spatial reasoning, and just watch this little girl. Here she is. Here she goes. Make sure I've got the sound on. Sorry, guys. Right, go on then. I'll pop it over to you now. In terms of spatial reasoning, pop into the chat. What did you see there? Just type in anything. In terms of spatial reasoning, what did you notice, that little girl? What did you notice about her? What did you notice? Tell me what you noticed. What did you notice about her as a learner? Yeah, she was building quite tall, wasn't she? You're right there, she was. And she kept trying again. So again, really showing how those effective learning characteristics are really woven through this kind of aspect. Yeah, she was really good at balancing. Yeah, she was really focused, wasn't she? She was checking. So again, we're back to effective learning characteristics again, aren't we? You know, she's checking her ideas. Is this working? Is it going to be okay? Sort of sitting back and looking at it. Very, very precise, wasn't she? Yeah, she was counting, Suzanne. I love that. Really taking her time, and she knows how to build. She was counting, yeah, but she knows, she knows how to stack. She had a very clear purpose there, didn't she? So just like that beginning video that talked about repetition, from watching this video, this child, I think, is about 18 months old, I think, maybe 19 months old, we can see someone has really sat with her and modelled this and taught her this. And I think we mustn't be afraid to say that we're teaching. Even in a baby room, we're teaching, because when we're modelling, when we're playing, when we're interacting, that's our teaching, right? So I like that little video. But yeah, and I think it begins to show you as well how closely linked number is, because every time she put one on, she was saying a number word. She was linking that stacking action to saying another word, wasn't she? So already she's learning the basics of counting. Okay, fantastic. Thank you, guys. So I don't know if any of you were lucky enough to have lovely wooden blocks in your setting, but if you do, how we present them is really important. So this is called shadowing. But if you imagine now that I just had a massive crate of bricks, of all of these just chucked in a big box, or this one, this shelf, the shelf is going to help you build easier, right? That big box, everything's in a big muddle. It's not very accessible. The chances are the brick you want will be, if you imagine, if you had a big box of bricks and you wanted that little tiny triangle, probably be quite difficult to be able to find it. So how we set up our resources is really important. So if you look at this straight away at tidy up time, you're able to see what's missing so the children know what they're looking for. And also, as they tidy up, they are matching the shapes accurately. And in terms of the triangles there, for example, they're having to match the orientation. So I'm not sure if you've got blocks, but if you have, it really is worth thinking about how you organise them. In my old reception class, used to have something called Mobilo, which is like little sort of cubes and connectors. And we sorted out all the cubes into one basket, all the connectors into another basket, all the pointy sort of triangles into another basket, so that when the children were picking what they wanted, what they needed, they could very clearly see what they were choosing from. And also at tidy up time, they actually were sorting by shape property without even realizing. So storage is really, really important. And as we talked about earlier on, as children start getting older and their constructions get more complex, you can get things like this happening. And this is a really good example here, actually, of combining resources. Okay, so we've got the wooden blocks, yes. We've also got some little logs. We've got some pebbles. We've got some dinosaurs. We've got some fake plants. But, you might, if you're with older children, nursery reception, you might be talking about that dinosaur at the top there, what can he see? Or if the little baby dinosaur somewhere, or if that turtle on that plank, if he wanted to not get eaten, where could he hide? So you start kind of getting into this kind of talking about position and viewpoints and directions all through children's small play and the things that they're creating. Okay, so some lovely examples there. But it just shows you actually within that space of birth to 5, how amazing is that brain development? Going from that baby trying to reach that ball to a child who can create this really within 5 years, 4 or 5 years. It's fantastic, isn't it? Little video here for you. This is from probably reception age children, I would have thought. We won't watch all of it. Just what's happening here. This is getting quite complex now. Okay, but we're not going to watch all of it, but just see what you notice about the children. Now, what he's doing now, because we can't see what he's done, she gets up and walks over there.
I was just seeing how I see what's in it.
Yeah, it's a good choice to go and have a look.
Here, not in the back. Here, yeah, that's right. The next one. This goes on. This might be a kid. This might be a tricky one. It's not 10. I've only got one more and she's got 2 more. Stop looking at that. Oh, my puzzles. Ow. You don't talk what's on here. And put that one there. Listen again. What people different?
Why did you want to put the people somewhere else, Amelia?
Because you told me to.
I know, I just wondered why did you choose him to change where his people went?
Yeah, I told him.
But why? Did you want it to be harder?
Yeah.
Sneaky. Can't even see
I'll
Alfie's
leave it
now.
there. In the chat box, what did you notice about what did you notice about those children? What did you notice? What would you say about them as learners? What did you notice? Pop it in the chat, anything at all. What did you notice? What did you notice? Lots of vocabulary, kept looking, kept checking. Yeah. So again, it's again back to those effective learning characteristics, isn't it? Now checking how things are going. That mirroring, yeah, really collaborative. He was waiting for her. So actually, there's a lot of PSCD here, right? And a real focus of attention on detail. So again, what a fantastic journey of sort of thinking and development. Yeah, perspective, definitely, Suzanne. You can see here the shift now, can't you? It's becoming more abstract, more about viewpoints. Yeah, lots and lots there. So there's these videos are all on the Early Childhood Maths group, but there's nice little examples on there. But a nice example of kind of mirroring that kind of, sort of. Oops. Oh no, we don't want that. Right. So again, so I mentioned about modelling. What to Daisy? No, we don't want that. Why has it gone here? Oh, it's taking me to your Instagram page, Damon. Hang on a minute. Oh, go away. Much as I love, let me stop sharing a minute. I think I clicked on the logo I've got with the slide there. Right, here we go. Put the sound on. So I talked earlier on about junk modelling. I would love, it would be good to know actually, if we can do a poll on here or not, Damon, are people still doing junk modelling? I do hope so. This little boy here, gosh, probably about 18 now, in one of my first reception classes I taught in Shrewsbury, really, really focused, really engaged, making this kind of model out of a bus here. Okay, and actually, as he was doing that, there was so much happening here in terms of shape. He wanted his reels to rotate, how the area of the box, how he was arranging his design. Then on the right-hand side here, this was from a school in Holland, the School of the Hague, the International School of the Hague, and in their kindergarten, they had these photos, a bit like a learning story. They'd a few pictures of the children as they were making something, and they actually had that picture on the wall with a caption of whatever they described it as. But the beautiful thing about that is that the next day it would inspire those children or their friends to come back and try and make the same thing. So really simple things we could do that again would be very similar then to that video, wouldn't it? That idea of looking, copying, modelling, mirroring, that sort of thing. Okay. And then the power again of being outside. And you haven't got to have expensive resources, but I think what's great about outside construction is how you can work on that really big scale. So, things like planks and tyres and your big dinosaurs and crates. I mean, if you look here at these children here, this was in reception when I was teaching in reception over in Shrewsbury. Look what they've created here, this kind of track for the dinosaurs. Quite intricate, right? But again, lots and lots going on here, as you can see. So giving children all the time, they're moving those things and they're carrying those planks and they're rolling those tyres. They're developing those really important physical skills, those core skills that are actually going to help them develop their eventually their writing. Also, I'm a huge fan of these. These are called H crates, like letter H crates. They're from Cozy. I think they're much better than milk crates. They're much more sturdy. And again, just some H crates and some decking planks. And I think this actually began as the Three Billy Goats Gruff, and then it became this kind of obstacle course. And again, at the end, if you can see or not, when the crates and planks ran out, we used blocks to finish the track. But also adding in here a pathway going to the left. So you've got to decide, are you going to go straight on? Are you going to go left? All these kind of mapping skills and all this sort of vocabulary really developing. So the power of actually working inside but outside on a really big scale is really, really important. Okay, and then thinking about stories and rhymes. I think we underestimate the powers of stories and rhymes and songs for really developing these kind of ideas. I mean, if you think about the Gruffalo, the reason that the Gruffalo thinks everyone is scared of the mouse is because he thinks they're seeing the mouse. What they're really seeing is the Gruffalo, right? So there's a lot here to think about with stories and actually how much are we getting the full use of our stories? Those links I've got on there for you, the shape, space and measure, are again links from the Early Childhood Maths group you can click on that will take you to a whole list of books. But think like the bear went over the mountain to see what he could see. And what could he see? The other side of the mountain. That's all that was there. So, using songs, using rhymes, row, row, row your boat, moving backwards and forwards, all those sorts of things. I was going to share with you a story, but I don't think we're going to have time. I might share the first bit of it, actually. Let me stop and come back to you for a minute. So I've got here some, if I can make myself, see if you can, how can I, oh, that's it. Oh, big screen there. Sorry about that, everybody. I've got a few books here, but, good for ones. Things like Dear Zoo are also really good for spatial reasoning because you've got a lot of it was to this, it was to that, and the different shapes of the different boxes. So, you might read that even with little ones and you might have fun, putting animals in different size boxes, baskets. So it's a really great one for the younger children, Dear Zoo. This one is fantastic, The Secret Birthday Message. Probably for more like your kind of nursery, perhaps reception, but in short, it's someone's birthday and he basically gets a set of instructions to follow in the morning. So when the sun comes up, look out for the biggest star. Below it, you'll see a circle. Behind that is the triangle. Go inside and look up to find a hole, climb through. And it's all about like a child like going on an adventure, on a mission, and he sees all of these different shapes along his way. But again, if you've got older children, you could go outside in the garden and you could actually make up, couldn't you, some of your own little paths to follow, which is lovely. Or the bear hunt. The bear hunt is great for spatial reasoning because we can't go over it, we can't go under it, we've got to go through it. But how often do we actually make the most of these stories? This one is also great. This is called Circle. They're from something called the Shape Trilogy. They're circle, square, and triangle. These probably are more for kind of your older children. They're quite complex, but the reason I like them is because they get children to really think about the last page of it. Says if you close your eyes, what shape do you picture? It's really developing those visualization skills. But some of my absolute favourites for nursery children are the Shark in the Park books. And these are fantastic. I'm sure you've seen these before. I think I've got a whole set of these. But the reason I love them is because of the vocabulary. So let's have a look. You just read you a bit of it. Timothy Pope is looking through his telescope. He looks at the sky and the moon up there. He looks left, he looks right, and this is what he sees. And it's all about perception. So he keeps seeing, if you know this book, he keeps seeing this kind of through this peephole. He keeps seeing what he thinks is a shark. But every time it's something else. So it gets children really looking at and talking about shapes. These are fantastic books. If you haven't got them, I'd recommend getting them. And again, I've done this with children, giving them kitchen roll telescope tubes and going out looking at different shapes and thinking what shapes could be. So really brilliant. There are lots and lots to think about in terms of stories and rhymes for children to be promoting those kind of, oops, Daisy, here it is. Hopefully you can see that. And then thinking about puzzles, I think puzzles are a bit of a dying kind of, they're dying out a bit. So, go back tomorrow, go into it and look at the puzzles that you've got and really think about, are they appropriate for the children? Obviously babies and toddlers need those, more of an inset style puzzle. But actually, as they get older across your setting, is there a clear progression with the jigsaw puzzles? Have they got all the pieces there? Sounds silly, right? But how awful is it to do a puzzle with a piece missing? And do you actually, think about teaching again, do you sit with children, do you sit alongside them, and do you help them learn how to do a puzzle? Do you talk about finding the edges, finding the corners, finding the sides? If they're doing a puzzle of, I don't know, Paw Patrol, and it's got the lid. You know, as they're doing the puzzle, keep looking back at the lid, getting them to make that connection. Oh, I wonder what that piece is. Or look at this picture, which, you know, what do we think this red piece is? All of those discussions, and getting them to think about if the piece doesn't fit, what are they going to do? You know, hovering it over the gap to try and work out where it's going to go. Have they got to rotate it? Giving them all this vocabulary, because completing a puzzle is a fantastic way of developing fine spatial reasoning. So go in tomorrow and be thinking about the puzzles that you've got for your children. And if you've got a Numicon, one of my favourite things, get out and get children using it. Numicon is great, obviously, for number, but also for spatial reasoning. If you've got any of these white boards, just letting children fill up the board with Numicon is a great activity for getting them to really think about spatial reasoning as well, and looking at what's going to fit in that space and different combinations they could use. Ultimately, there is so much connection between numbers and relationships of numbers and also spatial reasoning. Okay, so last time I talked to you a lot about sabotaging, about using your fingers, and about using dice and dominoes and 5 frames and 10s frames. These things are all really, again, interwoven with spatial thinking and spatial reasoning and pattern. So there's a very close link, and it's really important that we keep promoting spatial reasoning as much as we're promoting number in our settings. So from the spatial reasoning toolkit, I know you can't see all this probably on your screen, it's quite big, but the spatial reasoning toolkit really shows, actually, if we think about spatial reasoning and we think about every area of the EYFS, from PSCD to physical development to expressive arts, language, literacy, as in the world, within all of it, there is spatial reasoning woven in. And as children go into school and they into Key Stage 1 with their more kind of curricular areas, again, spatial reasoning is woven through so much. So just thinking about that. There are lots of documents here. Again, I'm going to send you through the links. These are all websites that are well worth checking out. There's Ericsson, Learning Trajectories, Dream, Childhood Maths Group, Birth to 5, all of these things. If you're using Birth to 5, it's got a real strong element of the spatial reasoning, so please check that out. So I'm going to come back to you for the last literally 4 minutes. If we think now about, let's think about your environments that you've got, okay? And let's think about maybe some things that you're going to do. If you want to promote spatial reasoning within your setting, what do you need to make sure, what things need to be in that environment? Okay, so what sort of opportunities do you need to provide within that environment? Whether it's babies or toddlers, pop in and don't press send until I tell you to. You're thinking about your environment, and if you want to promote spatial reasoning, you know, what things must you make sure that there's chances to do? Okay, and when you're ready, you can send it. Let's have a look what you're saying. Oh, I like that. Suzanne's going to set up her loose parts with small one and junk items together. Great, lots of photos. Suzanne, make sure you're there to model it, or it might be absolute carnage. You know, really invest some time in being there for that teaching. In other words, interacting. So we want blocks and planks. Yeah, what else do we want? Let's see what else we've got. Hang on a minute. Oh dear. Oh, I've gone back too high. Let's have a look. Space, blocks, different shape. Yeah, lots of space. Yeah, that would be lovely, wouldn't it? Open resources, different size boxes, construction materials, puzzles, definitely, more loose parts, different difficulties, yeah, small world, puzzles and blocks, construction, yeah, how you set them up, yeah, definitely. I'm really for the children's lead on that, you know, have those things available, Nikki, you know, see what the children say, definitely getting more outside. Children's construction on display, brilliant. Boxes, materials, yeah, how to build, brilliant. building blocks, planks, tyres. Oh, great, guys. You've got loads of ideas. Really brilliant. Actually, I'm going to put something quickly in the chat for you that I think you might find useful. I'm going to pop for you in the chat. This is from Scotland. One minute. We're a lot of talking about loose parts here, aren't we? So this is called the Loose Parts Toolkit. I'll pop it in the chat right now. This is a document you can download for free from Play Scotland. And it talks you through loose parts and all different kind of, the theory of loose parts, different ideas for loose parts, safety considerations. That's really worth looking at. There's one more I'm going to give you as well, actually, which we haven't really talked about tonight, which is mud kitchens. So children are kind of, making their own mud kitchen concoctions. Lots, and they're dishing up all of their mud. Let's have a look. This is a free book that I'm going to give to you now. I'll pop it in the chat for you again as well. There we are. And I would just say, just go back tomorrow. You're already doing all this stuff. We know that. Just go back and just see what you're doing and just think, actually, you know what, I'm doing this, it's really good, but how can I make it even better? How can I really, really weave spatial reasoning through everything that I do in my setting for my children? Okay, and that brings me to the end. 8 o'clock. Thank you very much, everybody. It's been me talking a lot, but hopefully I've inspired you. So I'd love to hear how you get on, and come to Southend if you want to. We'd love to see you. Thank you, Damon.
Thank you very much, Elaine, for that.